There are a million ways to sharpen a chisel, and all of them are correct. So really when it comes to sharpening, it's what do you feel like doing? I think that the best method when it comes to sharpening is the process that you will enjoy the most, or that you will hate the least, because you're gonna want sharp tools, and if you hate doing it, you're never gonna sharpen your chisels or your plain blades. So this is what I came up with that works best for me whenever I'm doing my sharpening. And I like to use a combination of diamond and whetstones. I don't see a lot of people using a combo like this. I don't know, what does that say about me? I have some really dull chisels here. I am notorious for not sharpening because I strop a lot. So I have a leather strap. And if you strop your chisels a lot, then you can save on sharpening. So I do that, so I don't sharpen all that often. But it is time to do that because these things are dull like a butter knife. When I first started out, I used these. These are Norton whetstones. And this one is a dual stone, a 1000 grit and a 4000 grit combo stone. This is an 8000 grit stone. I don't use this one anymore. It was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I use the 8000 stone. But what I have here is diamond stones, and I have them, I have 3 of them. These are by Sharp. None of this is sponsored, by the way. I have the fine, the extra fine, and then the extra fine, of course. What I noticed is that my sharpening edge right off of the extra fine isn't extra fine enough for me. And that's really subjective. I think you can get whetstones that go up to like an insanely high number, like 16,000 grit, 30,000 grit, whatever else. It's a little overkill for me, but this just isn't enough for me. So what I do is I will go through my diamond stones, then I'll go to the 8000 grit whetstone to finish it up. I'm gonna take my 8000 grit stone and I'm gonna drop it in my bucket of water. I'll let that soak there for a while. I don't have a set amount of time, I just let it soak there until I stop seeing some bubbles. A couple things I need, a rag. I have my stones. I have this little non-skid mat thing. I don't know if this does any good, but I have it. Put my diamond stones on there. A spray bottle of water. I've seen people use Windex for this. This is basically the lubricant for whenever I'm sharpening on the diamond stones. I have this little block here. This holds my whetstone, so I'll keep that with me. And then I use this jig from Veritas. This thing's kind of old. They've sold this thing for years, and I find it to be pretty good. You can, it's got different settings here. You can set the different angles. You can do micro bevels if you want to. So I like it. It's worked out really well for me, and this is what I'm going to use. Since my chisels are really gnarly, I'm gonna actually go from fine all the way to 8000 grit. If you sharpen your stuff a lot, you don't have to do that. You probably could just hit it with the 8000 grit and be done with it, or whatever your final method is. But I haven't sharpened it in a while, so I'm gonna start from scratch. So this is the same method I would do if I had a brand new chisel, or if I had like dents or something like that, dings in it. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to flatten the back. Now, some people get really into this. I only really care about the part is where the chisel is. I'm not gonna flatten up here. This is a lot of steel to remove. I'm not gonna worry about that. What I'm gonna do is a couple of strokes on the back on each of the stones, just so I can make sure that's flat and that there's no burr on there. Then I'll start with the bevel. Worst spray bottle ever. And I'm gonna do a couple chisels, so I'll do each of them while I'm here. I'm gonna wipe this stone off, and I'm gonna grab my next one, which is the extra fine. Little water. what I'm looking for is just an even sheen. So if there are some spots that are shinier than others, then I know that it's not exactly flat. So I'm just doing this until all of the back area, the bottom part of my chisel, looks like it's all the even amount of scuff. All right, those seem to be pretty good. Again, it's the back of the chisel. It's not that big of a deal. Extra, extra fine. It's probably really difficult to see that, but that almost instantly went from scuffed to shiny. Wipe all that off. I'm not going to go to 8,000 grit on the backs. You really don't have to. You don't even have to go 8,000 grit on the front of it if you don't want to. Okay, time to actually start sharpening the bevels. So when I first started woodworking, I used to think I had to have a micro bevel, and a lot of woodworkers will still tell you you have to have one. I don't think that's really true, because what I found out is I would have my micro bevel, and let me go back for a second. For those who don't know, a micro bevel is you cut or you sharpen the angle of your chisel. In my case, my chisels are a 25-degree angle. That's what they came in with the factory. That's what I like. Works good for me. A micro bevel is right at the very end of that chisel. You can go another degree more than that. And it's kind of like having a razor blade with a little razor blade on the edge of that razor blade. And a lot of people think like that's what they need to do for woodworking. Who am I to say they shouldn't? Works for them, that's cool. But what I found is that over time, my micro bevel, as I sharpened, just got further and further back to the point where it was basically just my regular bevel. So I just find that if I am stropping my chisels a lot, it doesn't really matter. And whenever I do strop my chisels, I do it by hand anyway. I don't use a jig for that. So whatever micro bevel I had, it went away anyway. So I'm not really sweating that. But this jig that I do have has the ability, down here there's a little knob you can turn, and that is for setting a micro bevel if you want to do one. So I'm sure there's other jigs out there that do a similar thing. I am not going to show you step for step how to use this jig. I'm sure there are plenty of videos or whatever, because this is a really old thing. But what I'll tell you is that I am going to set mine at, again, 25 degrees, because that's what are pretty typical for chisels. So I'm going to put the chisel in here up against my stop guide that is set, and it is set for 25 degrees. And then I'm going to crank down here on these little knob things and make sure I get even pressure. Some people like to put a Sharpie marker on the end just so you can gauge your progress whenever you're doing your sharpening. So that might be a good trick for you, especially if you can't tell what part you've sharpened and what you haven't, like if it's a really nasty chisel. So that might help you out. I'm going to go to the fine stone again, put some water on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let gravity do the work. I'm not going to take my chisel and really grind it onto the stone. There's no point in that. It has a little wheel on this jig, so I'm just going to do that. Make sure that the bevel is up against it. I'm going to put even pressure on my jig so I'm not pressing it one way or the other. And I'll just do a few strokes and then check it out and see how it goes. Nice. So instantly right across my bevel, it is a consistent scuff mark of where this was at. So as you can see, I'm only doing 10 to 15 passes each time, and then taking a look at it. And what I'm seeing here on the bevel is about a third of the way down on my bevel, I have an even, consistent scratch pattern or scuffing from the stone. So that means it's good. I'm getting constant pressure across the whole thing. That's exactly what I want. Don't need to go any more than that unless I'm seeing nicks. If there's nicks or something like that in your chisel, keep going until those go away. But I don't have any of those in this particular chisel, so I'm gonna go to my next stone. And I'm doing that because I don't want to take the chisel out of the jig and keep changing it out. It's easier to change the stones. So we're going to go to the extra fine. I'm going to go to the extra fine now. That feels like a sharp chisel. You don't have to do a whole lot on the higher grits. That's really just honing in that edge, but that feels like a really sharp chisel. Now, a lot of people will take it, and after they go to each stone, they'll just rub the back real quick just to remove any sort of metal burr that might be on the back of the chisel. So you will see people do that. Sometimes I do. I always do it on the last step. I don't always do it in between. A question you might have is, why would you progress in grits all the way up to 8,000 grit if you can use a fine grit or an extra fine grit and be just fine? You have a sharp edge. And the answer to that is you absolutely can. You don't have to. When you progress up in grits, you are strengthening, you're honing that edge, and that's going to give you a stronger edge, so it's going to last a little bit longer. So that's a big reason why people do that. If you want to sharpen all the time, you have no problem sharpening. Some people have sharpening systems just laid out on their bench and they quickly sharpen and go back to work. Then you don't have to do all of this. But if you're more like me and you like to batch out your sharpening in stages, then you might want to progress up in grits so that you have a more durable edge. So I just did the extra fine. Now it's time to go to the water stone. And big thing about whetstones, please remember this if you're going to take anything away from this video, and that is always flatten your whetstones, because unlike a diamond stone where it's a piece of steel, you're not going to wear a dip, a valley in a stone like this. You do in the whetstones, and you do really quickly. So before I use them, every single time, like in between chisels, in between sharpenings, I will flatten my stone. And to do that, I use another diamond stone. This is just a rougher grit one than these. You could use one of these if you want to. I just don't want the gunk, the whetstone gunk on my diamond stone here. So I just use this one just for flattening purposes. I'll put that here, get my stone out, and make sure that this stone is perfectly flat. Get the gunk off. And put it in my jig. When I sharpen on a whetstone, I try to move the chisel in different places so I don't wear a valley in one specific spot. Same thing though, same thing as diamond stones, 10, 15 passes, then check it out and see how it looks. And it went from being kind of shiny to really shiny. And since this is the final stone, I will rub the back. And while my stone's already here in my jig, I will take my diamond stone and I will flatten it again. And I can already see that there were some dips in there from that chisel. Throw that back in the water. If you really want to save yourself some time, get you one of these. This is just a piece of leather. It's a genuine horse butt strop. I do have a little bit of stropping compound placed on it that you can get this green stuff here. It seems to last what I can only presume 3 lifetimes, because you see I've had this for years. You don't even have to use the compound if you don't want to. But same thing as the stone, the stones, you can use your jig to strop this if you want to. I always hand strop it, but since it's already in the jig, I will use the jig to do this. Just a couple passes, not much. And then same thing, rub the back, and that is a sharp chisel. As you can see, that's a good looking chisel. So that's my sharpening method. It's the method I use for all my chisels, all my hand planes, everything. It's the exact same thing, and I use the same guide too. I recommend you figure out the method that's gonna work best for you, whether that's the scary sharp method of using some sandpaper on your table saw surface, or using whetstones or diamond stones, whatever it is. Just pick the method that's gonna enable you to sharpen your tools, because you're going to see a major difference in their performance between a dull tool and a sharp tool. So hopefully you enjoyed this sort of content. If you did, please subscribe and share this video with somebody who needs to sharpen their tools. You've been to other people's shops. You've seen the guy who has the dull chisel. You don't have to tell them, just send them this video and they'll know what you mean, that they need to get off their butt and sharpen their chisels. So make sure that you share this. And until we meet again, get in your shop and build something awesome.